America's workforce. Its strength is our nation's success. Join Ronnie Spellman on I Build America podcast as we explore innovative solutions and inspiring stories from leaders and workers shaping America. Discover actionable insights to build a motivated workforce.
And welcome to the I Build America podcast. We have a fantastic guest who is an expert in human resources and workforce development and military veteran transition, Robin Lovewell. Welcome.
Thank you.
Robin is the workforce administrator for the city of Colorado Springs in Colorado, which is uniquely under the Office of Economic Development.
It is.
And a new position.
It is just about a year.
So I am excited to have you on because part of our program is to expose people in workforce development and leaders from around the country, and both political leaders, business leaders, and community leaders about unique and advancing programs, innovations in the workforce development space. And yours is really unique. So you work closely with the mayor, but it's a new position, as we just mentioned. Why was it created and what do you do?
Yeah, thank you. So it is a new position. Like I said, I've been in this role for almost a year, and they also hired a small business administrator at the same time. So both of us started in May of 2024. The Office of Economic Development is a small but mighty team with the city of Colorado Springs. They work with businesses who are looking to come to Colorado Springs or expand in the Springs. And one of the first questions they usually get is, how do we find workforce? What's the talent like in the Springs? How do we connect with them? And they weren't sure how to do that. So they said, we need to bring on a workforce administrator, also reinvigorate the small business administrator role, which was previously held by our mayor.
Oh, okay.
And went vacant for a while. So we were both hired at the same time. Her name is Shakana Tedder. She focuses on small businesses in our community, in our city. And then I work with businesses on workforce, connecting them to different community partners in the area, schools, universities.
Well, not to interrupt you, I want you to tell me more about that partnership. But what I find absolutely amazing is, particularly at the city level, for your mayor to have that vision in creating those partnerships and bringing people to the table. I've seen it across different states. At the state level, they might have a lot of collaboration, or at least they try to have a lot of collaboration between departments, economic development, education, workforce development. But to see it at the city level, not that it's not done, but I think it's really creative in ensuring that that partnership exists. So I'm excited to hear that you are in that position and that that's the big focus. But you also, as you mentioned in your work role, you're partnering with schools, and you have some really great schools in the current technical education program. Tell us more about some of those partnership pieces.
We do. So although one of my main roles is to connect businesses with talent in the region and those partners that can help them connect with talent, I'm in the schools as well, meeting with principals, meeting with CTE, career and technical education directors, work-based learning coordinators, to learn more about that career and technical education landscape.
Right.
Because that's a talent pipeline.
It is.
It's usually overlooked. So there's really been a deep dive into what's going on with CTE, not only just by me, but by other workforce entities. And I partner with the State Office of Education, Colorado Workforce Development Council.
Oh.
I've got a great point of contact there, and she's in the schools a lot too. So we share information, and then I bring that information back to my director, which then gets up to the mayor. And so he has an idea of what's going on in the schools and how the city can help support. So there have been a couple programs that I've helped support on. And so that's been a great deep dive this last year as far as learning more.
Tell us about some of those programs, if you don't mind. I think it's interesting. When you get into a position, you're building your strategy, you're building your plan, you're executing your plan. And I think we lose sight of how significant what you're doing is, and then how much of a learning opportunities for others around the country to hear what you're doing so they can gain ideas and insight on what they can do.
Right. Yeah. So we have 17 school districts in our region.
Okay.
So it's unique. There isn't a unified school district. I think because Colorado is kind of the Wild West, or used to be the Wild West, and there's a lot of land. These pockets of school districts started years ago
Nice.
and still continue. And so I have been partnering with one of the school districts, the one that's closest to our city administration building,
Okay.
to work on a program to teach kids what it's like to work in local government, because that's a great career
Sure.
pathway. So what I did is I worked with the work-based learning coordinator and the AP government teacher on an after-school cohort to bring in city leaders to talk to students about what they currently do in their roles.
Right.
The challenge is it was after school and kids are so busy, whether it's with
Sure.
after-school sports or activities or work. And so that we ended up having to cut that short because it just didn't generate
Right.
enough interest. I think there was interest. Kids just weren't able to get there. So we're retooling that. And in the fall, we're going to bring kids from that school district to the city building for a day of meeting with city leaders,
Right.
doing some tours. So we're just retooling that same program.
I
And
know there's a city in another part of the country where they have summer internship programs that they're fun. So while the kids are out of school for the summer, they can apply to become part of that internship program,
right.
which is a pretty neat. And then there's another program in, again, different part of the country, within the hotel and hospitality industry that did something similar. They're actually busing the kids during the day as a part of the educational program. And they're going to hotel sites several times a week for several hours. And they're learning about hotel management in that industry. So there's some wonderful
Yeah.
programs right around the same concept that you're looking at, which is kind of cool.
Great. That is cool.
Now, you have a unique background that makes you uniquely qualified to do what you're doing. You have experience in human resources.
I
You
do.
have international travel. You worked at an embassy,
I
which
do.
is kind of neat. You have some economic development, I think, in your background as well, and then some veteran transition work.
Yes.
But the other cool things, I'd love for you to talk about some of those experiences. But the other neat thing, I've spent a large part of my career working with transitioning veterans, which again you have, but also working with spouses of active duty service members to have them employed, because we found that oftentimes they're underemployed. So you're the spouse of a veteran
I am.
that served over 25 years in the Air Force, which is
Yes.
really neat. But tell us about some of your human resources experiences and your veteran transition experience.
Sure. So I got into workforce development by working in what's called the TAP program, the Transition Assistance Program. That's a partnership between the DoD and the U.S. Department of Labor.
Right.
It's a full week course for transitioning service members to not only learn about their veterans benefits and get them ready for working in the civilian world, but there's a 2 to 3 day course that they can take within that week on job searching, on
Right.
how to write a resume, how to interview, how to use LinkedIn effectively. So that's where I came in. Was I worked with them on that job search piece. So that was
Okay.
more the US DOL part of it.
Right. That's an incredible program. And I've been working with another organization that's really focused on that veteran transition piece because it's so critical. At one point, I visited one of our Air Force bases. This has been a couple of decades ago, and met with 06s and above to talk about their transition. And it's amazing. They've been in service for 20 plus years. They were terrified about the
Yes.
transition because it's just a different rhythm in the private sector than in the service.
Yes, for sure. I definitely saw that with senior leaders, whether 05s, 06s and above, or senior enlisted leaders that had served 20 plus years. I think they were some of the most nervous
Right.
about their transition because it had been so long since they'd been in the civilian world.
And I think you helped with their resume. They were terrified about writing a resume and how to construct it well, and you helped them with that process.
Yes, I did.
Yes.
I did. It was great. I enjoyed immensely working in that program.
So what's next for you as you build out your strategy? You've been in the position now for 12 months.
Yes.
What are you looking at over the next 12 months? What's the golden strategy?
Ooh, that's a great question. It kind of it's evolved over this past year, and I really can take it where my director wants me to go with it, as well as her being informed by the mayor.
Right.
But there are some things that we're working on. We're working on some pieces of information, I should say, that we're putting on the city's website
Okay.
for businesses or for just community members to learn more about different career and technical education options in the schools. So we're doing like a site map on our city website. I'm working on pulling all the resources together that we have. We have a myriad of resources in our community into an easy to access informational sheet or on the website. So I'm working on kind of more of that behind the scenes information to share with the public, as well as just continuing to work on my 3 pillars that I have. So
those 3 pillars, did you already identify those?
I don't think I did. I mentioned, I've kind of mentioned a couple of them. So the working with businesses that are considering coming to the Springs, looking to expand in the Springs, helping retain businesses as well. Then that K-12 piece is supporting K-12.
Right.
Again, like I said, I don't have a ton of programs that I can help them with or use to help them, but I'm more of that liaison between the city and K-12. So continuing to make those inroads and build those relationships. And then that third piece is military and veterans and military spouses, which is kind of my bread and butter. I've been working in that for a long time. So, for example, this Thursday, the day after I get back from this conference that I'm at, I'll be at what's called the Mount Carmel Veterans Service Center, and they have a 2-day intensive program for transitioning service members that they can take in addition to TAP. And I'll be doing mock interviews over there. So that'll be super fun.
I'd love to have you talk more about the resources that you mentioned that you make available to businesses and other people in the community. But first, tell us about the size and general scope of your city, Colorado Springs. What does it look like? Businesses, population, just so people can get kind of an understanding of how it compares to them in size and scope and impact.
Yes. So Colorado Springs is almost 500,000 residents.
500,000.
Yes, at this point.
That's not a small city.
It's not.
Okay.
It's not. It's grown quite a bit since we relocated there close to 15 years ago for my husband's military job. And we've seen that with regards to just the number of people who have moved there, as well as prices. I think that's happened everywhere, though. House prices and just the cost of living. But it's a beautiful city at the foot of Pikes Peak.
Okay.
Which is one of the 14ers in the state of Colorado. The MSA, so the Metropolitan Statistical Area, is around 750,000.
Oh, wow.
So it's a big area. There are a lot of people in our region.
Okay.
We have 5 military bases and lots of veterans as well.
That is absolutely incredible. It reminds me, of course, the Hampton Roads region.
Yes.
And the size and scope and kind of the diversity then of its economy. And so you're looking to attract businesses, grow business. What industries seem to be bubbling up as kind of the new industry for the region?
Advanced manufacturing has come back to the Springs, from what I understand. There was some, and there have always been businesses there, but there were more maybe in the 90s, and they're coming back. They're interested in locating in the Springs, and so we're working with community partners, whether it's schools or the local workforce center, on making sure that we have the talent in the region to staff those types of industries.
That is huge when you put kind of that perspective on it. So I'm glad you share that 500,000 people and then 750,000 for the MSA is a really large community.
It is.
So the scope of what you and your mayor need to accomplish is huge.
It is.
And so it's exciting to hear what you're doing. I've worked with chambers of commerce around the entire country, and to see the partnership between the mayor's office, the chamber of commerce, the economic development boards and groups, to see that synergy work well is just so critical. Making sure that you're partnering with businesses. I've opened businesses around the country, offices, and moved companies around the country. And getting that dynamic right is just so important, because in the end, a lot of people lose sight of this, but economic development, workforce development is about creating opportunities for people. So the more you can help businesses grow and expand, the more opportunities are created for the citizens of your community, right?
For sure.
Yeah.
Sounds like you know a lot about economic development. So,
and I'm passionate about economic development and workforce development. I'm passionate about seeing people get opportunities that help them build their family and care for their family and create opportunities for their family. And so getting that right is just so important. And I love seeing businesses grow.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. It's great to see the flourishing in Colorado Springs, the
Right.
businesses who are currently in that process of choosing Colorado Springs.
Right.
Like you said, we work closely with the Colorado Springs Chamber and EDC.
Right.
And when site selectors or businesses are interested in coming, and we've got a great partnership with them, we meet with EDC members or ADC employees quite often
Right.
and discuss everything that's going on in that landscape.
And you reminded me, I worked in home building, and I remember visiting a really large community that we had just acquired. We graded the land and we had a groundbreaking. And I went to the groundbreaking for this really large community, hundreds and hundreds of homes. And to go back to that same community when it was just all dirt during the groundbreaking, to go back to the community, see these beautiful homes with the green grass, kids playing in the playground, it is just so invigorating.
It is.
When you see communities come alive and you see that energy flow right and people are happy and they're working and they're enjoying life. And in Colorado, I hear is just gorgeous. You mentioned the mountains. So what is the community like? I presume people are skiing and hiking. And,
Yes,
yeah.
all of the above: skiing, hiking, paddleboarding, kayaking, mountain biking.
Very nice.
It's very active. There are a lot of different outdoor activities in the region. Like I said, climbing 14ers. We have what's called the incline, which is a huge set of stairs that goes up a side of a mountain that people like to get records for going up, and some people just want to make it up.
Right.
So there's a lot going on in the outdoors there. We
Right.
love, my husband and I love skiing. We skied probably 10 times this winter.
Oh, wow. Okay. Very cool. Now, so I'd love for you to tell us more on going back to the workforce development piece. Now, you mentioned kind of what's next for you, but are there specific goals, targets that you have? And then also the resources. What kinds of resources are you now collecting? I know the operation is so new that you're probably still managing through what it should look like, but I want you to tell me about those two items. But before that, what was it like working in human resources abroad on behalf of the U.S.?
It was exciting. So as you mentioned, I had a stint in HR in between two different workforce roles. When my husband was still active duty Air Force, we moved overseas for a unique role for him at the U.S. Embassy in Abu Dhabi.
That is so cool.
Which is in the United Arab Emirates. People might recognize Dubai a little bit more than Abu Dhabi. They're right down the road from each other. Dubai is more like New York, and Abu Dhabi is more like Washington, D.C., where you've got the embassies there, and
Right.
there are more political things going on there. It was fascinating. I had never been to a U.S. embassy, even though we've been stationed in other locations around the globe. Typically, military members and their families aren't, hopping from embassy to embassy. That's more the State Department. So it was really exciting and very eye-opening to see that world, what the State Department does, and serving in their HR department and learning all their policies, processes, procedures.
And here's what's unique for me, just to look at the scope of your background, human resources, being abroad. Dubai is a huge place for business growth. They invest a lot in businesses growing in that market. And if anyone hadn't studied Dubai from an economic development standpoint, it is an incredible place. Presumably as well from a workforce development. They get their workforce, from my understanding, around the globe, particularly neighboring countries, because they just don't have enough workers. So that might be a good test case in workforce development. But just having the exposure of being there, I presume, helps you so much, even in Colorado Springs.
Yes, for sure. Gaining that human resources experience, but then, like you said, more broadly, just being in a different country, very different than any other international country that I'd been stationed at previously. Just seeing how their economic development works and their workforce development, and like you said, they bring in people from all over the world because they just don't have enough workers of their own. So it was very
and those buildings are huge.
huge. We lived in a 35-floor apartment building.
So amazing. And so your resources, what are you finding companies need in Colorado Springs to build their workforce?
Yes. So companies are looking for military talent. They're very interested in that. The transitioning military members, they're interested in connecting with military spouses. They're looking to those talent pipelines in K to 12. So there are companies that are investing in what's going on in career and technical education in the schools. There are companies that are working with our local American Job Center, the Pikes Peak Workforce Center. They have amazing job fairs. I worked at the Pikes Peak Workforce Center for 5.5 years, so I've worked on their job fairs, and they have a few really large ones per year with about 150 employers. They have small ones every month with about 25 to 30 employers. So there's a lot going on, a lot of different ways for businesses to connect with talent in the region.
And Robin, I want to end on this. You've mentioned this a few times, and I've spent a lot of time working with career and technical education programs around the country. I chaired an organization that focused on the partnerships between the private sector and CTE leaders. And that career and technical education is so important. They called it something different when I was in school, vocational education.
Yes, me too.
But it's a great place for us to find talent for young people coming out of high school. Not everyone goes to college. In those programs, it's amazing. They're like community colleges in some parts of the country at the high school level because of the training that the students receive. Great place to recruit for workforce development. So I want you to end on that. And that veteran piece, I can't stress that enough. And you mentioned it again just a moment ago, and the ability to recruit talent from our service members. Service members are incredible. I found that a lot of times the private sector doesn't really understand what they did in the military because of terminology and the like. But speak briefly, just in closing, about those two groups as a workforce development recruiting option.
Yes. So on the CTE side, you're right. College is a great option. A lot of kids go in that direction, but there may be some students that they don't see themselves going to college after high school, but they do need to learn a trade, learn a vocation,
skills,
gain more skills, build out their knowledge. And so those CTE programs in high school are great because they might leave high school with a certification or two.
Right.
They may leave high school with additional training that they wouldn't have gotten just taking their normal core courses that can help boost them into that career right after high school.
Right.
And then on the veteran side, businesses are always interested in recruiting veterans. Like you said, they may not understand exactly what that veteran did or how that vet might fit into their business, but educating those businesses on, these are some of the core competencies that veterans have. These are their transferable skills. They did, infantry and the Army. Definitely, there's not an industry for infantry out on the outside, but they have so many transferable skills. They may need to go back to school and get a certification or get more training, but those transferable skills carry over regardless of what career.
Here's what I've been saying now for a few decades, and we'll end with this, but and I was speaking to a military service member. What they get above all of their specific technical training in the military, those service members know how to show up on time. They know how to be ready. They know how to be prepared, and they know how to figure out solutions across the board, whether enlisted or an officer. If they're not showing up, that's a really big issue in the military. And sometimes that's what we need in business is to bring them on. They're going to figure out how to do the job well. They just need an opportunity to showcase that skill.
Exactly. They do have those core skills that businesses are looking for, and they're easily trainable. They learn quickly. So hiring, whether you said veterans or military spouses, that's another untapped talent pool that's out there, has a higher unemployment rate. But as we were talking offline, they're highly educated and are looking to work as well.
In fact, I looked at some of the numbers from the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, and I don't have those in front of me, but the unemployment rate for the spouses, as you mentioned, pretty significant, which is just astounding to me because
Yes.
they're so well educated, they're so well versed because they're traveling the country and they're traveling the world. You take a military spouse, whether male or female as a spouse, the ability for them to pick up and move their family that quickly, oftentimes, and make it work out so well is just on its own amazing.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true. We
You
get good at
look like you have experience. And
Yeah. I don't like the sound of tape going over boxes in an empty house.
right.
You just get a little bit tired of that noise after a while, but you get good at making
Right.
those moves.
Right.
as
You get good at
said.
making it work well.
Yes.
Robin, it's been a delight having you. I enjoyed learning about what the city of Colorado Springs is doing. And I hope it serves as an inspiration to other cities around the country on how to build and merge and partner between workforce development and economic development and even the mayor's office. So I appreciate you joining us.
Thank you. This was fun. I appreciate you.
Thank you for joining us on the I Build America podcast, where we're looking to make a difference around the country in workforce development.
Thank you for listening to the I Build America podcast. Please subscribe, share, and comment, and be sure to join us next time for more insights and inspiring conversations on building a powerful American workforce. I Build America, building workforce success one podcast at a time.
I build America.